Welcome to my channel, where we explore the raw, unfiltered tapestry of life's most profound moments. Today, I'm going to share a deeply personal story, one that many of you, especially those of us navigating the later chapters of life, might find eerily familiar. It's a story about family, about home, and about the unexpected ways betrayal can surface where you least expect it. Just a few months ago, I was living in the house I'd called home for decades, a place filled with memories, but also growing shadows. My only daughter, April, meant the world to me. Yet, one scorching summer afternoon, a simple disagreement escalated into a confrontation that would shatter my sense of security and force me to make an unthinkable choice. She looked me in the eye, and the words she uttered cut deeper than any wound. "Mom, you're going to a nursing home." That moment changed everything. It stripped away years of sacrifice and love, leaving me with a stark reality. What would you do if the person you cherished most suddenly saw you as a burden? What choice would you make to reclaim your dignity and redefine home? Stay with me, because what happened next will surprise you and might just change the way you look at your own family forever. Welcome back to my story. You've heard about that fateful moment when my daughter April's words pushed me to the brink of change. But to truly understand the weight of those words, we need to step back a bit and look at the bigger picture of my life before the alarm bell truly rang. My life on Meadowlark Lane wasn't always bleak. This old house was once a home filled with laughter and joyful gatherings where April and Gabrielle grew up. I spent my whole life building and nurturing it. Every brick, every branch in the garden bears my imprint. But over time, with age and life's changes, the house seemed to grow old too. And more importantly, the relationships within it gradually faded or even became strained. I was used to April complaining. It was an indispensable part of my daily life, like breathing. From the smallest things, April could turn them into a major issue. "Mom, you forgot to turn off the bathroom light again." April's voice would echo whenever she visited with undisguised annoyance. I knew it was a small detail, but the way she said it, the way she looked at me, as if I were a naughty child incapable of taking care of myself. I just wanted to say, "Honey, I did so many things today, sometimes I'm just forgetful." But I usually swallowed those words. I didn't want to cause more trouble. Then there was the smartphone. "Mom, why can't you learn to use a smartphone like a normal person?" That was a question I heard repeatedly, like a weary chorus. I tried, I really did. I watched tutorials, asked Gabrielle to teach me, but for someone accustomed to rotary phones and handwritten letters, this digital world seemed too complex. Every time April asked that, I felt a pang of sadness. Had I become outdated, a burden, an obstacle in my daughter's modern world? April's frustration wasn't just in her words, but in her eyes, in her heavy sighs every time I did something she didn't like. I remember my days working at the city hospital. 30 years as a nurse, I witnessed countless births and deaths, so much physical and emotional pain. I learned to be resilient, to cope with pressure, to heal others' wounds. But the toughening of those years couldn't protect me from the coldness, the indifference from my own flesh and blood. It was like a wound in my heart, not bleeding, but festering and deep. One afternoon, I was preparing dinner for April and the kids. I accidentally dropped an old porcelain plate I cherished. It shattered on the kitchen floor. The sound was jarring, and I knew exactly how April would react. Sure enough, she didn't say a word, just looked at me with an annoyed expression, then let out a heavy sigh. That sigh, that look, hurt more than 1,000 criticisms. It spoke of April's disappointment, her weariness with me. It was as if she was saying, "Mom, you messed up again." I felt like an old, useless object, just waiting to be discarded. Was this the ending I deserved after everything I had done for my child? Shame and loneliness enveloped me. And then that fateful day arrived. It was a scorching June afternoon, and the air in the house seemed thick with tension. I don't recall exactly how the argument started, only that April was furious about something trivial, perhaps about me forgetting to check the utility bill or not paying something, but her words didn't stop at mere nagging. April's voice grew shrill, and then she yelled a phrase that was seared into my mind. a phrase I will never forget. "You're going to a nursing home." A nursing home. That was the ultimate image of loneliness, of abandonment in my mind. It's where people send the elderly who no longer have anyone to care for them, those who are considered burdens, useless. All my life, I had always tried to be a good mother, a strong, independent woman. I had shouldered the family, raised my children, sacrificed my own dreams to ensure April and Gabriel had the best possible life. And now I was being treated by my own daughter as a burden, an old item to be put away, to be removed from her sight so she wouldn't have to bother with me anymore. The pain, the humiliation, it was greater than any physical pain I had ever experienced. It was the pain of betrayal, of helplessness, of feeling discarded. I lay there in my familiar room, but everything suddenly felt alien. The walls seemed to weigh down on me. The ceiling felt like it was about to collapse. Was this the outcome for a mother who had dedicated her entire life to her children? Did I deserve this treatment? I wondered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, staring at the dark ceiling, April's words echoing in my head. I asked myself, what should I do? Can I continue living with this pain? Can I let my daughter dictate my fate like this? A small voice in my head whispered, no, you can't. The resilience, the survival instinct of a nurse who had faced life and death suddenly surged powerfully. I couldn't let myself drown in this despair. I had to do something not just for myself, but for my dignity, the very thing April was trying to strip away. It was also in that dark night, when everything seemed to collapse, that a light glimmered in my mind. A bold idea, seemingly crazy, but it brought me a ray of hope. I would not live in this humiliation any longer. I would not let my daughter dictate my life. I had to do something to change everything. And I knew this change would have to start from the very place April valued most, this house. That night, I didn't sleep. April's words kept echoing in my head, but no longer as profound pain, but as a wake-up call. You're going to a nursing home? That phrase wasn't just a threat, it was a challenge. It was like an electric shock, rousing me from my long-held resignation. I had spent my whole life trying to please others, to preserve the things I thought were important. My home, my family, my children's approval. But now I realized that in doing so, I had lost myself. I got up and walked to my bedroom window. The first rays of dawn shone, illuminating the familiar garden. The old maple trees where I used to play with April and Gabriel when they were little. The rose beds I had spent hours tending. Everything was familiar, holding both sweet and bitter memories. This house wasn't just a structure of bricks and mortar, it was my whole life. It was where I got married, had children, watched my children grow up, and where I lived every moment of joy and sorrow. But now it had become a cage, a burden, and a place where hurtful words were spoken to me. I remembered the words of Winnie, a dear old friend from my nursing days. Winnie was a sharp woman, always seeing things clearly. Home is the walls, dear. Life is what happens here, she said, touching my temple, and then placing her hand over her heart. The house is just the walls, darling. Life is what happens here and here. Winnie's words were like a prophecy. This house, with all its memories, was no longer a place where I found peace and happiness. It was just walls. My life, my happiness had to be somewhere else, a different space. The decision formed clearly in my mind. I would sell this house. This was a huge decision, a complete turning point. I knew it would shock April. She would feel betrayed, hurt. But I no longer cared about her reaction. I needed a change, a new beginning for myself. I needed to free myself from the burden of the past and toxic expectations. I needed to reclaim my dignity, what April had tried to trample. The first step was to find a real estate agent. I had never done this on my own before. I felt a little anxious, but the thought of a new life gave me strength. I searched online, asked old friends, and finally I found a seemingly trustworthy agent. And this is where Gabriel, my son, enters the story. Gabriel had always been a thoughtful, insightful young man. He never complained, never criticized. He always listened to me, always asked me genuinely how I was doing. When I told Gabriel about my intention to sell the house, I was prepared for another argument. But no. Gabriel was silent for a moment, then said, "Mom, if you think that's what's best for you, I'll support you." Gabriel's words were like a tonic for my soul. He helped me research the local real estate market, helped me organize the complex paperwork, and was always by my side throughout the process. There were days when I felt discouraged. Selling an old house with cracks in the walls and a broken air conditioner was not easy. I faced many offers lower than expected, with complaints from potential buyers. But each time, Gabrielle encouraged me, "Mom, this house has a lot of potential. You've taken such good care of it. We'll find the right buyer." He wasn't just my son, but also a solid support, a companion. Perhaps in every misfortune, there's a blessing in disguise. It was thanks to Gabriel's help that I truly felt the unconditional love from my son, something I had sometimes forgotten during the months I was immersed in April's negativity. This brought us closer in a way I never expected. I realized that in life, sometimes the worst things open doors to the best things. The process of preparing the house for sale was also a journey of self-discovery. I had to clean, reorganize everything, and get rid of unnecessary items. It was both a physical and spiritual process. Every old item, every keepsake evoked a memory. There were beautiful memories, but also sad ones. Burdens I had carried for so many years. I realized that letting go of these items was also like letting go of emotional burden. I didn't need to keep everything to hold on to memories. Memories reside in the heart, not in material possessions. As the house gradually emptied, I felt a strange sense of relief. No more pressure to maintain it, no more fear of criticism. There was only me and a large space for new beginnings. I began to envision my next life, a smaller, cozier apartment where I could live freely, no longer dependent on anyone, no longer having to listen to complaints or harsh words. The decision to sell the house was not impulsive. It was the result of a long process of endurance, reflection, and finally the courage to free myself. It was a declaration: I am not a burden. I am still a valuable woman who can decide her own life. And that alarm bell, "April's, you're going to a nursing home," though painful, was the catalyst I needed to take this bold step. I was ready for a new chapter in my life, a chapter full of freedom and hope. The storm has passed. The turbulent waves of anger and misunderstanding have finally subsided. After the old house on Meadowlark Lane was sold, a truly new chapter opened in my life. With the money I received, I didn't waste it. I found a smaller, cozier apartment in a quiet area near a beautiful park. It was the perfect place to start over. I no longer had to worry about fixing the air conditioner, no more headaches over old bills, and most importantly, no more listening to April's nagging or harsh words. My new life began, lighter and freer than ever before. I felt like a huge burden had been lifted. Every morning, I no longer felt heavy. Instead, there was a sense of excitement, a curiosity about the new things the day would bring. I signed up for a painting class near my home. It was a long cherished dream, but I had put it aside due to work and family. Now every brushstroke, every color on the canvas brings me joy and relaxation. I also joined a book club at the local library where I met new friends, people with similar interests and a passion for literature. We share our favorite books, discuss stories, and sometimes simply enjoy a cup of coffee and chat about life. I even started gentle yoga in the park every morning. The morning sun, the fresh air, and the gentle movements helped me feel healthier, both physically and mentally. I met other seniors in the park, people in similar situations to mine, who were also seeking peace and joy in their later years. We shared stories, experiences, and together created a small community filled with understanding and sharing. I realized that no matter our age, we can always find joy, find friends, and find new meaning in life. But the most wonderful thing, what I never expected, was April's change. Initially, her calls were still full of resentment, but I patiently listened, without arguing, without judging. I was simply a mother listening to her daughter. Gradually, I noticed a change in April's tone. She started asking about me more, not with accusatory questions, but with genuine concern. April told me about her job, about the kids, about the difficulties she was facing, balancing personal and financial life now that my house was no longer a cushion for her. She confided in me about the pressure to find a bigger house for her family, about having to deal with problems on her own that I had inadvertently taken care of for her before. I listened, offered advice if asked, and most importantly, I didn't judge, didn't bring up old mistakes. I was simply there, a mother listening to her daughter. One evening, April came to visit me. We sat in my small, cozy apartment, drinking hot tea. There was no nagging, no sighing, there was just silence. But it was a meaningful silence. April looked at me, and in her eyes there was no longer irritation or disappointment, but deep remorse. I saw tears rolling down her cheeks. "Mom," April said, her voice choked and trembling, "I'm so sorry. I've been a terrible daughter. I didn't understand you. I was too selfish, too focused on myself, and I forgot about your feelings." My own tears welled up. They weren't tears of sadness, but tears of relief, of forgiveness, and of boundless love. I hugged my daughter, an embrace that had been waiting for so long. The wall of misunderstanding between us had completely crumbled. We were no longer mother and daughter with conditions or expectations, no longer giver and receiver, but simply two women who loved each other unconditionally. It was a sacred moment, a moment I will never forget. After that evening, our relationship completely transformed. April started visiting me more often, not out of obligation, but because she wanted to be with me. She asked about my painting classes, about the books I was reading. She listened to me tell stories about my new friends at the park, and most importantly, she learned how to show genuine care and affection. Silas and Fallon also came to visit me frequently. They brought stories from school, innocent jokes, and filled my small apartment with children's laughter. I realized that sometimes a big push is necessary for people to wake up. My decision to sell the house and become independent forced April to face reality and recognize her mother's true value, not as a possession, but as a person. She learned a lesson about responsibility and appreciation, and I learned a lesson about letting go and unconditional love. I had embarked on a long journey from extreme pain to serenity, from feeling discarded to reconnecting with my daughter. And I realized that happiness is not found within the walls of a big house, not in material possessions, but in genuine relationships, in understanding, in love and forgiveness. That is the true home of my soul. You see, my life took a completely new turn, one I never imagined. As Gabrielle said, sometimes it takes a big push for us to see what truly matters. The things that have always been right in front of us, but were obscured by worries, misunderstandings, and unnecessary attachments. For me, selling the house wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a journey of self-liberation, a ritual of letting go to find myself again. It helped me realize that a person's worth isn't in the assets they own or the size of the house they live in, but in the love they give and receive, in the peace of their soul, and in their ability to adapt to life's changes. The old house on Meadowlark Lane, with all its memories and burdens, became a symbol of the past I needed to shed to reach for the future. I've thought a lot about others, those who have also faced major letting go decisions in their lives. Perhaps my story isn't unique. We all have doors we need to close, baggage we need to unload for life to be lighter. I remember the story of Mrs. Carroll, an old friend from the book club. Mrs. Carroll was a wonderful woman, always full of positive energy, even in her 70s. She had lived her whole life in a grand old mansion with her husband. When her husband passed away, her children, who were grown and lived in other states, insisted she keep the house to preserve their father's memory. But Carol didn't see it that way. She told me that every morning she woke up in that large house, she felt loneliness envelop her. The echo of solitary footsteps on the wooden floors, the empty rooms reminded her of her loss. Memories aren't in the walls, darling, she told me one afternoon over tea. Memories are in your heart and mind. This house is now just a burden, a shadow of the past. Mrs. Carroll decided to sell the mansion despite her children's objections. Initially, her children were very angry, believing she was destroying the family's legacy, but Mrs. Carroll was firm. She used the money to buy a smaller, cozier apartment, just enough for her. The remaining money she used to fulfill her dream of traveling the world, a dream she and her husband had once cherished. Now, Mrs. Carroll is the happiest woman I know. She has traveled through many countries, met many cultures, and made many new friends. Her children later on also realized that their mother was much happier without the burden of the old house. They started visiting her more often, not to control her, but to hear stories about her travels, to see their mother living a full and meaningful life. Carol's story is a powerful testament to the strength of letting go to find true happiness. Or another story about Mr. John, an old friend of Gabrielle's. Mr. John and his son had been estranged for decades over a small business misunderstanding. Both were too proud, too stubborn to forgive each other. Years passed, and the father-son relationship remained frozen, neither willing to yield. Mr. John lived in loneliness and resentment, while his son carried a simmering regret. It wasn't until Mr. John became seriously ill and had to be hospitalized. The son, though still angry with his father, returned to care for him out of duty and family affection. During those days in the hospital, with life and death hanging by a thread, they had the opportunity to talk openly, no longer arguing or blaming, but sharing heartfelt confessions. Finally, Mr. John let go of his pride, let go of the decades of resentment. He forgave his son, and more importantly, he forgave himself for holding on to those burdens for too long. He realized that the precious remaining time in his life should not be wasted on anger, on misunderstandings that could be resolved. After being discharged from the hospital, their relationship was healed, becoming closer and more genuine than ever. Mr. John and his son spent more time together, doing things they had never done before. Mr. John's story reminds us of the healing power of forgiveness and the importance of cherishing moments with family while we still can. These stories, including my own, share a powerful message: the strength of letting go and reconnecting. We sometimes cling too tightly to material possessions, to the past, to unrealistic expectations of others. We forget that life is about relationships, about shared moments, about smiles and genuine tears. Letting go isn't giving up, it's making space for better things. Reconnecting isn't just mending cracks, it's building stronger new bridges. I learned that sometimes giving up a physical house is the way to build a stronger spiritual home. A home built with love, understanding, compassion, and forgiveness. A home without old walls or broken air conditioners, but with fresh relationships, new interests, and new friends. That home is no longer a place where April can throw hurtful words at me, but a place where I find true peace and happiness. Dear friend, I've told you about a tumultuous journey, from hurtful words to a bold decision and finally an unexpected reconciliation. That night, as I sat in the taxi heading home, after a warm dinner with April and Gabrielle, my mind was still full of thoughts. I looked out the window at the streetlights passing by, and Winnie's words, my dear friend, echoed in my head again. Home is the walls, dear. Life is what happens here. She touched her temple, and here, she placed her hand over her heart. At that moment, I truly understood the profound meaning of those words. My real home was no longer within the walls of the old house on Meadowlark Lane. It was no longer the material possessions April once wanted to claim, or the burdens I once carried. that home had transformed, becoming a much broader, more meaningful concept. It lies in my relationships with my loved ones, those who were there for me when I needed them most, like Gabrielle, my son, who was a solid support throughout the process of selling the house and transitioning. It lies in the reconnection with April, my daughter, who once hurt me deeply but has now found remorse and genuine love. It lies in the new friends I've met at my painting class, at the book club, in the park every morning. People who have brought me joy, shared experiences, and a sense of belonging. And then it lies in the new interests that have brought me joy, in the small victories and discoveries of each day. Every brushstroke in art class, every page of a book I turn, every morning yoga session under the sun. All are pieces that make up my new home. It's a home without walls, without a roof, but it's stronger than any physical structure. It's built with spiritual values: love, connection, peace, and joy. The biggest lesson I've learned, and the message I want to convey to you today, is don't let material possessions define your happiness. We often tend to cling to assets, to wealth, believing they will bring us security and happiness. But as my story and Mrs. Carroll's story have shown, a large house or any possession cannot compensate for the absence of love, respect, and inner peace. True happiness cannot be bought with money or measured by square footage. It comes from within, from meaningful relationships, and from how we perceive life. Ask yourself, what truly brings me joy? Perhaps it's not something you can touch. Challenges can be opportunities for growth. Sometimes the most painful events, the harshest words, or the greatest losses are the driving forces for us to change, to grow, and to discover new values. April's words broke me, but they were also the big push that prompted me to act, forcing me to face reality and seek a new path. Without that incident, perhaps I would still be living in resignation in a house where I no longer found happiness, and my relationship with my daughter would forever be a burden. Look at the challenges in your life, not as obstacles, but as opportunities to become stronger, wiser, and happier. True value lies in relationships. In life, the most important thing is not what you own, but the people you have in your life. Invest in genuine relationships, love and forgiveness. Spend time with the people you love, with those who truly care about you. These relationships will be the true home of your soul, where you find comfort, joy, and support when life is difficult. My relationships with April and Gabrielle and my new friends have become the most precious assets I possess. Be brave enough to let go of what no longer serves you. Letting go is not a sign of weakness, but an expression of strength. Let go of what no longer brings you joy, what no longer serves your growth, whether it's a house, an old habit, a toxic relationship, or even an unrealistic expectation. Let go to make room for new, more positive things. It's freeing yourself from the shackles of the past. Always be open to new beginnings. No matter your age, life always holds new opportunities and experiences. Never think it's too late to learn a new skill, to make new friends, or to embark on a new adventure. Embrace them with an open heart, with curiosity and courage. I found joy in painting, in books, in yoga, and in conversations with my new friends. These are things I never thought I'd be able to do before. I walked into my apartment, turned on the light, and went to the window. The park below was dark, only the streetlights casting a gentle glow on the paths and benches. Tomorrow will be a new day with new opportunities and experiences, and I am ready to embrace it with an open heart, as I will do every day in my new life. I hope my story has given you some food for thought, a little motivation or comfort. Remember, life goes on, and we always have the right to choose how we live, how we love, and how we find happiness, no matter the circumstances. Your real home is not where you were born, but where you find peace and happiness. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Have a good day.